Next on our trip in the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite hype train is the Capcom side of things. Capcom seems to be willing to go all over their gaming timeline for roster choices in their crossover games, so we will too. And by we, I mean my gameplay footage providers, Sam and AT from SoftwareAgentsCorp, will be joining me once again for this video.
Hey guys, it's Sam here to talk about the top 10 best Capcom fighters for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite.
Hey, it's my job to read the title card, and where'd AT go?
I'm back and I'm ready for round 2.
This battle is about to explode. Fight!
The same rule will be in place that was in my wish list on the Marvel side of the roster. No characters that appeared in previous Marvel vs. Capcom games, even if they are unlikely to return. While I would love for a Mingo to make a triumphant comeback, we wanted to give the spotlight to some never-before playable characters. That being said, we have some obscure Capcom characters to talk about regardless. So I'm going to take you for a ride with our top 10 Capcom characters that should be in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Number 10. The Brave One from Magic Sword. Magic Sword was one of Capcom's many late 80s, early 90s beat-em-up games. Beat-em-up characters tend to fit well in fighting games. Just look at how ones like Captain Commando or Hagar from Final Fight fit in so well in previous Marvel vs. Capcom games. Plus, the beat-em-up style was one of Capcom's best genres early on, so it would be cool to see some forgotten games get represented. The Brave One is Magic Sword's protagonist, and he follows the standard default hero moveset.
In Magic Sword, you use melee weapons, spells, and other people to conquer 50 floors of fun in the Tower of Babylon.
That's not what it's called.
Okay, fine, it's the Tower of Babylon.
That's not what it's called either. Dragon's Keep is the name, and his moveset could use his mighty sword with the lightning or magic that it fires acting as a projectile. While it would be difficult to implement his allies in basic attacks, you could give him all the weapons they used. So instead of his ally throwing a boomerang, the Brave One would throw one instead. Similar to how Chris Redfield had many of the Resident Evil weapons in his moveset in MVC3. The Brave One could also choose his ending in Magic Sword, getting the bad ending if you decided to take the Orb of Evil rather than destroy it. Maybe he could have an evil form for a hyper combo that makes him temporarily stronger for the cost of health. Or it could just be an alternate color scheme since he cannot revert back to good once you take the Orb of Evil. His only downside, if you want to get trivial, is his name is so non-specific, but I guess it could be more standard. He could be like the Devil May Cry wait, she's higher on the list, never mind. Number 9. Rouge from Power Stone. While there is always some hyperbole in saying these characters should be in the game, Power Stone really should get a representative in Infinite. With the Infinity Stone system, that fits in well with the plot of Power Stone to obtain said Power Stones, giving a character a reason to be in the crossover, maybe mistaking Infinite's gems or stones for Power Stones. As for the rep, I would say Rouge, both because I like her overall character, and according to an article in Siliconera, in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, she was one of the characters cut from the final roster. This may mean someone at Capcom likes her more than we think, and it's conceivable to see her move from Power Stone's 3D open arena to a smaller 2D arena. Rouge's attacks would probably be just scaled down, but she would have all of her abilities from Power Stone, mainly dancing, magic carpet riding, and of course fire. Her level 3 could be like her Power Stone transformation into a significantly more blazing version of herself. I could see this being like a Dark Phoenix, only not as intentionally overpowered. Mainly how Phoenix had the flame feathers in that form. Just don't accidentally misspell her name by switching the U and the G, otherwise people might think another character is making a return. Number 8. Vanessa Z. Schneider from PN3, The Zero is Silent. Let's put the most obscure character we can think of on this list. This is probably the most unknown we'll get.
Now, if you're talking obscure, Vanessa is like hyper combo obscure.
Here comes a new challenge. You must crush them.
Vanessa is from a third-person shooter from a game barely anyone remembers that was exclusive to the GameCube, but she would actually fit well in a fighting game. Besides the fact that she's a space future, not robot woman who shoots generic energy blasts, she's really good at dodging projectiles with her flexibility. So I could see her being a very reactionary character with counters and moves that let her avoid attacks to escape or getting close, similar to Catwoman's counter in Injustice or like Wesker in Taskmaster. Since her game was more shooting based, maybe she could have a counter hyper combo that specializes on projectiles, similar to Doctor Strange. She also has various upgrade suits for offense and defense, which could work like many of the power-up hyper combos, or at the very least give her good alternate color palettes. Her other moves would mostly consist of her various energy electric attacks that can give Capcom some room to work with.
She's a robot, she can do anything.
She's not a robot.
I have no idea if I can count her as a musical character, but when she uses her attacks and dodges, they look like dance moves. It always looks like she's tapping her foot and shaking her booty to the beat as she shoots. It's like she was built to constantly have Casey and the Sunshine Band playing in her head.
She's not a robot.
Yeah, I know she's not a robot. I meant built metaphorically. Everyone takes things so literally. Number 7. Someone from Street Fighter. Which character? Really any that I'm not expecting. I won't be picky here, unless you want me to be. Then Rose. No wait, Jury. This is hard. As anticipated from a Street Fighter character, they fit in well with different fighting games, so seeing someone who's not featured in every Street Fighter game is pretty interesting. As Capcom crossovers have shown us in the past, we're always going to get Ryu and Chun-Li, but any other characters are usually a wild card. In Marvel vs. Capcom 3, the unexpected Sea Viper surprisingly fit in well with the MVC mechanics, using her rocket boots more than she did in Street Fighter and bringing back the optic blast. Not to mention her moveset was very unique in the Marvel vs. Capcom setting.
Let's finish this! Level 3!
Even in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, Alex was a welcome addition, being a fan favorite who did not get much spotlight out of the games. As mentioned earlier, if you wanted me to pick just one, I would suggest Jury, since she's basically the face of modern Street Fighter games, and seems like a character that could keep up with the fast nature of Marvel vs. Capcom. Plus, her 3 hyper combo moves are already set up. Her Feng Shui engine could act as her short-term hyper combo upgrade move. Her Street Fighter V critical art can be a single-hit projectile hyper combo similar to Beautiful Joe or Zero, and her second Ultra combo from Super Street Fighter IV has the cinematic flair to be a level 3 hyper combo. I could also go on about how Rose, Karine, Alex, Dudley, and Rashid would all fit in too, but I do not want number 7 to contain its own top 10 list within this top 10 list. Number 6. Asura from Asura's Wrath. Asura is a perfect fit for Marvel vs. Capcom. With very few recent new IPs by Capcom, Asura adds a new modern character that, more importantly, loves to fight. He's a demigod who brutally beats up other demigods.
You know, he's like a really angry Akuma, even though that's super redundant, and he's got extra arms. So I'm sure he has a lot of punches he can be doing.
While his power is definitely higher than the standard fighter, there are a few routes you could take when balancing him. He could use his Street Fighter IV style, like in his DLC campaign that was non-canon, where he fought Ryu and Akuma on equal ground with simplified versions of his attacks. However, he could also be a high damage, short combo character where he deals chunks of damage. Or maybe he can be like Akuma, where he has all of his power and just less health for the sake of balance. As for his attacks, while you could go for the aforementioned countless punch attack, I could see him being a character who only has power-up hyper combos to go with his various forms from Asura's Wrath. He could go into his 6-armed Vajra form for a hyper combo similar to those that temporarily increase power and give the user a few new moves, in his case the JoJo's-style rapid punch attacks. Another hyper combo could be his Unlimited mode, which could function like Shenko's move that eliminates hit stun, since Asura was unaffected by any attack in this magma-covered mode. His level 3 could be his ultimate form from Asura's Wrath, Mantra Asura, which has its own, more powerful evolutions. This is where the developers can go crazy with how he uses it since it's final boss material. Number 5. Time for a rep from a classic Capcom franchise we could not leave off this list.
Number... whatever is the plane from 1942.
No, I told you either Resident Evil or 1942 gets a spot on the list, and the 1942 idea is too weird. No one is going to be on board with playing as a plane.
Come on, don't be negative. This plane bravely fought for our freedoms in 1942, 1943, 1941, 19XDX, and even during Operation Thunderstorm.
Wide shot.
Can't it just be a stage? I was going to talk about Rebecca Chambers. It was going to be cool.
You know how they made all those historical video games about Operation Desert Storm and the Iraq War? These games are the granddaddy of that tradition. With its historically accurate weapons, Gemini Laser, and loop-de-loops, this aircraft ended World War II for us on several occasions, like when it invaded Japan, or when it won us the Battle of Midway.
I know you put a lot of thought into a moveset, but I can put it on the honorable mentions. Can I do the real choice now?
If Vic Viper can be a race car driver, this plane can be a fighter.
How does it hyper combo?
Hyper combo? How about a joint strike?
Alright, great, you're done. Real number 5, Rebecca Chambers from Resident Evil. She may not be a highly requested Resident Evil character, but she has some good tricks and a potential moveset, and a key role in the series.
I don't know anything about Rebecca. I don't know. She gets scared by a zombie.
Hey, don't be rude. She barely screamed in that media clip.
It wasn't a zombie, it was a snake. You'd be pretty terrified too if a giant snake was all up in your grill trying to reenact Anaconda 3.
Looking at how previous Resident Evil characters played in Marvel vs. Capcom games, I would put Rebecca over Leon and Ada Wong of my favorite candidates. In reality, I would like to see all 3 characters make it in the game, but Rebecca has my favorite potential moveset, and the other 2 would play too closely to Chris in my mind. Ada would have a cool crossbow though, and if we went by series legacy alone, I would have to give the spot to Leon.
Rebecca Chambers and escaped convict Billy Cohen team up to fight leeches and investigate an Umbrella Corporation plot.
It was a stormy night when the leeches overwhelmed the Ecliptic Express.
With the game's partner system, players could switch back and forth between both characters to solve puzzles and take advantage of their unique abilities. So you see, Rebecca and Billy could be one character who's 2 people. Kind of like the Ice Climbers, or those aliens from F-Zero GX.
In Resident Evil 5 Mercenaries mode, besides the standard gun and ranged attacks, she uses forms of tear gas so she can get up close and personal. In Infinite, maybe she could use these fumes for something like proximity damage or poison damage over time, which has not been explored much in the Marvel vs. Capcom games. I think Rebecca listens to some 90s hip-hop as well, since one of her moves was called a Rump Shaker, where she basically goes full-on Armika against the opponent, which is a good move when all else fails. Number 4, Lord Raptor from Darkstalkers. We all know Darkstalkers will always get a rep in Capcom crossovers, since Capcom and fans alike love Morgan, but the other characters are wildcards. Capcom always throws in at least one extra Darkstalker character based on Marvel vs. Capcom's history. If we could only have one additional Darkstalker, I would go with Lord Raptor, since he's too cool to ignore. He's an Australian zombie rock star who can turn you into a basketball and slam dunk you. What's not to love? Being that he's from a fighting game, his moveset is already made up. Capcom will just have to make his in-game Darkstalkers physics fit in with the Marvel vs. Capcom engine like they did with other Darkstalkers characters in the past. He may not be as flexible when turning into drills and buzzsaws transitioning into a 3D model, but I do not see many moveset changes for him in the future. If anything, I would say give him a level 3 based off his win pose where he steals his opponent's soul. This move would be similar to how he stole the souls from a bunch of hunters in the Darkstalkers anime OVA, only soul stealing represents him stealing his opponent's health and recovering his own, like Shang Tsung's throw in Mortal Kombat 9. And forget about Dazzler versus Dante in a guitar duel, Raptor should challenge Dante's shredding. Lore states, Raptor's final concert disintegrated his body and left his audience as basically skeletons because it was so rockin', and dark magic was involved, but Dante has Devil Trigger, so it's a fair battle of the bands.
Beat people with your guitar and stay classy. It's a good choice.
Number 3. Dr. Wily and Bass from Mega Man. I suggest them together as one character since I do not see both characters individually getting in the game, so why not honor some of Mega Man's most iconic antagonists? If you want them as separate characters, I would be on board with that too. However, I have two ideas for this pair. One with Bass as the main playable character, and the other with Dr. Wily at the helm.
I don't want to play as Dr. Wily, but dang, Bass is cool. That's a good choice. Because we don't need another Zero, Mega Man, Proto Man. We'll get Bass. We need an anti-hero. He's basically the shadow of Mega Man. Even though I think Bass came before Shadow. Anyways.
Well, yeah, Bass was one of those 90s characters that was an edgier version of the main character, except he did not overdo his edginess like Shadow. For the idea where Bass is the primary playable character, Dr. Wily would be in the background giving him orders, like Pokemon Trainer in Brawl. Dr. Wily would even participate in certain attacks with his robot creations, like the various hyper combos that bring in other characters. Maybe Bass can just run wild with very little help from Wily, considering how often he rebels against his master, using his other tools like Treble, his robot dog, for an upgrade hyper combo. The other idea I had for them is where Wily is the main fighter since it's been 30 long years. Give Wily a shot to fight against the world's best.
Dr. Wily's been in the background too long. It's time for him to prove his superiority over man, machine, and God.
Dr. Wily would fight in the same vein as Tron, with all sorts of wacky weapons based on his many appearances while sitting in his giant robot. Throw some robot masters in there as hyper combos, and he can even call Bass as either a level 1 or 3 to be a nuisance on the screen. With all of Dr. Wily's technology across the many Mega Man games, there's more than enough material to make a full moveset. Number 2. Lady from Devil May Cry. Okay, where do you start with her? Usually you notice her name or some of her aesthetics first off.
I wish her name wasn't so generic, but Lady seems like a good one too. She has a big-ass machine gun and a schoolgirl outfit, so you really can't go wrong.
Fantastic. Now that we have all the apparent information out of the way, Lady would play differently than the other Devil May Cry characters. She's more of a zoning fighter, relying on guns and a rocket launcher called Kalina Ann, which acts as a close-up weapon as well. She has a bayonet at the end of Kalina Ann, which she swings slowly. That could mean in a fighting game setting, it may have a lot of hit stun or armor to trade off for its lack of speed. Other than that, guns, 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 and more rocket launcher. All of her shooting attacks from Devil May Cry 4 would move easily into a 2D environment. She could be the Hawkeye of guns where she can combo projectile attacks into other projectile attacks. She can even in a manner similar to Hawkeye's Scattershot. You can also look at how Dante's gunfire moves work in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 for reference on how ladies may function in Infinite. Translating other moves she had when she was playable in Devil May Cry 4 into a fighting game, her guns and rocket launcher can push her back to give her more space to set up her zoning tactics. And she can use it to zip all over the screen in a manner similar to Spencer with his bionic arm. All of these tools naturally make her built for zoning. I'd imagine Lady could also charge her rocket launcher for distance and damage like Zero's Buster. For hyper combos, outside of cinematic ones she would have like her DMC friends, She could have a hyper that enhances her guns and rocket launcher with some grenades, which is how she made up for her lack of Devil Trigger in DMC4. I'm sure you'll like her upgrades, even if they result in overkill.
Like my upgrade? Overkill!
Here are a few quick honorable mentions. Ryu from Breath of Fire. He has a sword, power of the elements, and can turn into a dragon. I think we have a solid moveset right here. Devilot from Cyberbots Full Metal Madness. I want her in the game not because of Cyberbots, but because I love her assist in Marvel vs. Capcom 1, where she yells something and then her robot explodes. The main reason I did not give her a spot is because I feel if Cyberbots gets a rep, it will be Jin for his legacy in the crossover, and I cannot see Cyberbots getting a second character. Any character from rival schools. Underrated fighting game series, and any character can be implemented easily. Just look at how well Batsu fit into Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. Since Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is sort of the spiritual predecessor for Marvel vs. Capcom 3, I think Batsu has a higher chance than we may think. And finally, Scrooge McDuck, which was suggested by viewer Hui Hui, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Since Capcom has the famous and fun DuckTales video games, and Disney owns both DuckTales and Marvel. So while Capcom is getting the license for Marvel, how about Disney slips in the DuckTale license while they're at it? It would be a good cross-promotion for the 2017 DuckTales series. Huh? Dream? Probably. Number 1. There's one obscure character I can think of who has enough of an underground following and would appeal to those who have never heard of him that fits for our top spot. It's time to put Gene from God Hand in a Marvel vs. Capcom game. God Hand is one of the most notable cult classics that Capcom has produced based on my personal observation. It came out at a good time when 3D style beat-em-ups like Devil May Cry were popular, and it twisted the formula to be more than just another addition to the genre.
Man, God Hand is amazing. It's like, what if they made Final Fight in the Resident Evil 4 engine in a Fist of the North Star setting?
Not to mention, the game was self-aware and rolled with it quite nicely.
Finally, a boss fight.
Despite the fact that the game has not received much attention from Capcom, they actually considered the protagonist Gene for Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but he was allegedly omitted in order to include Amaterasu from Okami, being behind only Mega Man in terms of internal popularity among the characters left out of the game. It also helps his case that Gene as a character would be a blast to play. Gene has one of the highly sought after God Hands, giving Gene immense strength and useful techniques that he can mix in with his already known martial arts skills.
The focus of the game is all about combat. You just look at the game and his whole moveset writes itself.
He would have Dante-like combos that can start with one attack and lead into a cornucopia of other moves. He can grab and punch to set up for standard combos, or knee you in the face indefinitely, or just hit you continuously to ruin your day.
Also, he needs to spank people in that game.
Wait, does he actually? Oh my god, he does. That being said, in addition to his fighting ability, Gene represents the spirit of Marvel vs. Capcom. Besides representing the best and most popular of each franchise, it is also about giving praise to the underrated or forgotten series.
So give me my Gene. I want to use the God Hand.
Have I mentioned that I love God Hand in this video yet?
I guess a few more seconds of fanfare won't hurt. Close us out.
It's so God Hand good.
And there you have it. Gene from God Hand is our number 1. Now, what did you think of these choices? I know we likely will not see full agreement, so tell us which Capcom characters you think should be in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, whether we discussed them or not. Thank you all for watching. If you haven't heard us talk about the Marvel side of the roster, check out our video on that. Otherwise, I have plenty of other fighting game content on my channel, and my co-commentators from SoftwareAgentsCorp also have some Capcom-themed reviews. And if you don't feel like clicking anything, then I'll just say see you in the next video.